By the winter of 1944, the war in Europe had entered its most brutal phase. Cities lay in ruins, forests were churned into frozen graveyards, entire divisions vanished in days. The optimism that followed the Allied landings in Normandy had hardened into something colder, more calculating. This was no longer a war of movement. It was a war of attrition, observation, and precision. And nowhere was this more evident than in the forests and villages of the Ardennes, where the last great German counteroffensive of the Second World War would unfold, the battle history would remember as the Battle of the Bulge. In this environment, artillery dominated the skies, tanks ruled the roads, but snipers ruled the silence. By December 1944, Nazi Germany was losing the war, but it was far from defeated. The Allies had broken out of Normandy. Paris had been liberated. American, British, and Canadian forces were pushing steadily toward the German border, yet behind this progress lay a dangerous assumption: that the Wehrmacht was exhausted, defensive, and incapable of major offensive action. That assumption would prove catastrophically wrong. Hitler's final gamble was simple in concept and desperate in execution. Strike through the Ardennes Forest, split the Allied lines, seize Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace in the west. The terrain chosen was no accident. The Ardennes was dense, rugged, forested, and historically considered unsuitable for large-scale mechanized warfare. In 1940, the Germans had proven that assumption wrong. In 1944, they intended to do it again. But this time, the battlefield had changed. Air superiority, artillery saturation, and mechanized infantry were only part of the equation. A quieter, deadlier struggle was taking place beneath the tree line, one fought by men who fired only when absolutely necessary. Snipers. German military doctrine placed enormous value on observation and fire discipline. Unlike Allied forces, which often relied on overwhelming firepower, German units emphasized early detection, precise engagement, officer-led tactical control. German officers were not rear area commanders. They were forward leaders, often exposed, often visible, and often targeted. To protect these officers, the Germans developed strong counter-sniper practices, dedicated observers scanning tree lines, immediate suppression fire on suspected sniper positions, rapid triangulation using muzzle flash and sound. On paper, it was effective. In practice, it relied on one critical assumption, that the sniper could be seen. Unlike Germany or the Soviet Union, the United States entered World War II without a deeply developed sniper tradition. Before 1942, sniping in the U.S. Army was largely improvised. Marksmanship was valued, but specialized sniper doctrine was minimal. That changed rapidly after hard lessons in North Africa and Italy. By 1944, each infantry regiment had trained snipers. Scout sniper schools emphasized patience, concealment, and observation. The sniper was no longer a lone hunter, but part of a two-man system. Shooter and spotter. Their mission was not body count, it was disruption. A single sniper properly positioned could paralyze movement, eliminate officers, collapse unit cohesion, force entire formations into defensive paralysis. And all of it depended on one thing: remaining unseen. Every rifle shot creates signatures. This was well understood by 1944, muzzle flash, especially visible in low light or snow. Dust or snow disturbance, revealing position. Barrel outline, easily recognizable to trained observers. Heat shimmer, visible through optics. Sound direction, allowing rough triangulation. German counter-snipers were trained to look for these signs. In winter conditions, snow made the problem worse. A single shot could throw up a white plume visible for hundreds of yards. Suppressors were rare. Flash hiders were limited, and many solutions interfered with accuracy or reliability. Snipers needed something better, something simpler. Warfare has always rewarded improvisation. Some of the most effective battlefield innovations were never designed in factories. Tank crews adding spare tracks for armor. Infantry using sandbags to reinforce vehicles. Pilots modifying gun sights in the field. Snipers were no different. By late 1944, experienced American snipers were experimenting constantly, altering firing angles, using terrain shadows, masking barrel profiles, reducing visible signatures in unconventional ways. Among these improvisations was a technique so simple it bordered on absurd: cloth. A sniper operates under constraints unlike any other soldier. He cannot fire rapidly, relocate easily, rely on suppressive fire, call for immediate support. Every shot is a calculated risk. In the Ardennes, where German units were alert, aggressive, and desperate, the margin for error was razor-thin. A single visible muzzle flash could bring mortar fire, machine gun suppression, artillery barrages. Survival depended not on killing faster, but on not being found. It was in this environment that American snipers began refining techniques that reduced multiple signatures at once. Cloth, especially wool, proved unexpectedly effective. It absorbed flash, it trapped unburned powder, it reduced snow disturbance. It broke up the rifle's outline. Used carefully, replaced often, and managed intelligently, it could mean the difference between one shot and 12 hours of survival. The Ardennes winter of 1944-45 was one of the coldest on record. Temperatures plunged well below freezing, snow blanketed the forests, weapons froze, fingers went numb. Breath condensed into visible clouds. For snipers, winter was merciless. White landscapes amplified movement. Sound carried unpredictably. Light reflected off snow in blinding flashes, and the human body, motionless for hours, became its own enemy. Yet winter also offered advantages. Reduced foliage improved visibility. German movement was channeled into predictable routes. Officers were forced into the open to maintain control. A skilled sniper could turn winter from liability into weapon. Snipers did more than kill, they unnerved. German after-action reports repeatedly noted the psychological impact of unseen shooters. Soldiers hesitated to move. Officers avoided exposure. Entire units became reactive instead of proactive. A sniper did not need to fire often. He only needed to fire effectively. When officers began falling without warning, command structures fractured. Orders went undelivered. Timetables collapsed. Initiative vanished. By late 1944, both sides understood this truth. A single sniper, properly employed, could influence a battle far beyond his numbers. In December 1944, as German forces surged westward through the Ardennes, American units scrambled to hold critical roads, villages, and supply routes. Some of these positions would be defended by infantry. Others would be defended by armor, and some quietly, invisibly, would be defended by men whose names would never appear in official histories. Men whose weapons were not new, men whose tools were not advanced. Men who relied on patience, discipline, and occasionally a sock pulled over the barrel of a rifle. The story that follows is not about technology, it is not about numbers. It is about how one battlefield adaptation, born from necessity, refined through experience, and executed with discipline, demonstrated a timeless truth of war. What the enemy cannot see, they cannot stop. In Part 2, we will follow one such sniper from training to the frozen forests of Belgium, and examine how improvisation, doctrine, and opportunity converged on a single winter day in 1944. World War II did not create snipers, but it transformed them. By 1943, the Western Allies had learned a hard truth. Modern industrial warfare did not eliminate the individual soldier, it magnified his importance. One man, properly trained and correctly placed, could shape the behavior of entire enemy formations. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the quiet war between snipers. When the United States entered World War II in December 1941, it did so without a deep sniper tradition. Unlike Germany or the Soviet Union, both of which had formalized sniper doctrine between the wars, the U.S. Army viewed marksmanship as a general infantry skill, not a specialized role. This gap became evident quickly. In North Africa and Italy, American units encountered German soldiers who fired rarely but decisively, targeted officers, radio operators, and machine gun crews, controlled movement through fear rather than volume of fire. These were not random riflemen, they were trained snipers. Reports from Tunisia and Sicily consistently noted the same pattern. German snipers delayed advances, disrupted command, and inflicted casualties disproportionate to their numbers. By mid-1942, U.S. Army leadership could no longer ignore the problem. The response was pragmatic. Rather than create a new elite branch, the Army focused on identifying soldiers with exceptional marksmanship, patience and discipline, fieldcraft experience, psychological resilience. Training programs were established at several locations, including Camp Ritchie and Camp Wheeler, often drawing lessons directly from captured German manuals. The curriculum emphasized fundamentals, range estimation without instruments, wind reading using vegetation and terrain, camouflage and concealment, observation over engagement. Snipers were taught a counterintuitive lesson. Your primary weapon is not your rifle, it is your invisibility. Jack Callahan did not stand out at first, Born in rural Pennsylvania in 1919, Callahan grew up hunting not for sport, but necessity. During the Great Depression, marksmanship meant food on the table. Missed shots had consequences. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in early 1942. His instructors noted his shooting scores, consistent, controlled, and calm, but what truly distinguished him was something harder to quantify. He could wait. Where others fidgeted, Callahan remained still. Where others rushed shots, he observed. During field exercises, he routinely detected instructors before being detected himself. By late 1943, he was selected for sniper training. American doctrine emphasized a two-man sniper team: shooter, responsible for engagement; spotter, responsible for observation, ranging, and security. The spotter was not subordinate. He was the sniper's second set of eyes, brain, and conscience. Callahan's spotter would eventually be Corporal Louis "Red" Henson, a former surveyor from Ohio with an uncanny ability to judge distance. Together, they trained relentlessly. They learned to record every shot, track patterns of enemy movement, identify officers by behavior rather than insignia, resist the urge to fire unless the shot mattered. Every sniper training course returned to the same issue. No matter how skilled the shooter, firing revealed position. German counter-sniper doctrine was effective. Observers scanned for flash. Machine guns saturated suspected positions. Mortars followed within minutes. In wooded or urban terrain, the lifespan of a detected sniper could be measured in seconds. Callahan became obsessed with this problem: not accuracy, not lethality, visibility. In late 1943, Callahan trained in cold weather conditions in England. Winter revealed new vulnerabilities. Snow amplified muzzle flash. White terrain highlighted barrel movement. Frozen ground kicked up visible debris. A single shot could create a signature that lingered long enough for enemy spotters to react. German units in Europe were particularly adept at this. Many Wehrmacht formations had veterans from the Eastern Front, men accustomed to countering Soviet snipers in snow and forest. Callahan understood something essential. If the Germans could see him, his skill no longer mattered. Sniper training encouraged experimentation. Soldiers were expected to adapt equipment to conditions. Official doctrine acknowledged that no manual could account for every battlefield variable. During a cold weather exercise, after being repeatedly killed by instructors following his muzzle flash, Callahan tried something unorthodox. He pulled a spare wool sock from his pack, without cutting it, without modifying the rifle. He stretched it over the muzzle. The next shot produced no visible flash. Minimal snow disturbance. A softened sound signature. The instructors couldn't locate him. Callahan wasn't satisfied with anecdotal success. He tested the method repeatedly. He discovered wool fibers diffused burning gases. Cloth trapped unburned powder particles. The sock disrupted the barrel's silhouette. Slight moisture improved effectiveness. But there were limits. After several shots, powder residue accumulated. If reused too long, the sock could ignite, creating the very flash it was meant to prevent. The solution was discipline. 5 shots maximum. Replace immediately. Carry multiple spares. The method required no tools, no special issue equipment. Every soldier already carried socks. Officially, the U.S. Army did not endorse the technique. Unofficially, instructors took note. Callahan was not alone. Other snipers across training camps were experimenting with cloth, burlap, and improvised flash reduction, but no one advertised it. Sniper culture valued secrecy. What worked was passed quietly from veteran to student, from team to team. By the time Callahan deployed to Europe in late 1944, the method was already refined. Callahan landed in France months after D-Day. By then, the war had changed. The hedgerows of Normandy had given way to open terrain and then to the forests of Belgium. German resistance stiffened as Allied forces approached the Reich. The Germans were no longer retreating blindly. They were preparing something. The Ardennes Forest offered everything a sniper both feared and desired: dense cover, limited visibility, channeled movement, predictable route. German forces relied heavily on officers moving forward to maintain momentum. This exposed them. Callahan understood the opportunity. If the enemy could not identify the source of fire, they would hesitate, and hesitation in war is fatal. The sock was not a weapon. It was not a miracle. It did not make a sniper deadly. It made him invisible. And in the winter forests of Belgium, invisibility was more powerful than firepower. In Part 3, we will follow Callahan and Henson into position on a single winter day in December 1944, hour by hour, as a quiet adaptation reshaped an entire German sector. December 18, 1944. The third day of the German offensive, later known as the Battle of the Bulge, had begun to expose its true nature. This was not a lightning advance. It was a grinding push through forests, villages, and frozen roads, where control depended not on speed, but on leadership. German units moving west relied heavily on junior officers operating close to the front. Orders had to be shouted, relayed by runners, or delivered face to face. Radios were scarce, lines were unreliable, remove the officers, and momentum stalled. It was in this environment that a single American sniper team took position before dawn, unaware that the next 12 hours would become one of the most devastating sniper actions of the Western Front. Staff Sergeant Jack R. Callahan and Corporal Louis Henson moved into place during the early hours of darkness. Their hide was a ruined stone farmhouse overlooking a narrow forest road, one of the few routes capable of supporting German supply movement through the Ardennes. Snow muffled their footsteps. The walls of the structure had collapsed inward, creating natural concealment. From their vantage point, they could observe a German command post roughly 650 yards away, several trench lines and foxholes, a road junction used by messengers and supply parties. The position had been selected after 2 days of reconnaissance. It offered something rare in winter warfare: visibility without exposure. The two men worked methodically. Snow was brushed away from firing points to prevent disturbance. Rubble was arranged to break up straight lines. Local debris was layered over their outlines. Callahan positioned his rifle through a narrow gap in the stonework, ensuring the barrel never protruded beyond cover. At 5:30 hours, he pulled a dark wool sock from his pack. It was slightly dampened with snow. He stretched it over the rifle's muzzle. As daylight crept through the forest, German activity increased. At 6:12 hours, a German officer stepped into view near the command post. He paused, consulted a map, and gestured toward the road. Henson ranged the distance silently. 580 yards. Callahan waited. The rifle fired once. The sock absorbed the flash. The snow remained undisturbed. The officer collapsed. No immediate reaction. German soldiers nearby looked around briefly, then returned to their tasks. No return fire followed. The first kill had gone unnoticed. Sniper doctrine emphasized restraint. Callahan did not fire again immediately. Instead, he observed. German behavior revealed critical information. Officers emerged at predictable intervals. Runners followed the same routes. Machine gun crews rotated positions regularly. This was not chaos, it was a system, and systems could be dismantled piece by piece. A second officer appeared, this one more senior, identifiable by posture and the deference shown by nearby troops. Range approximately 610 yards, wind negligible. Callahan fired, the officer fell. Again, no visible reaction. German troops assumed artillery fragments or stray fire. In heavy combat zones, officers died for many reasons. A sniper was not yet suspected. By 8:30 hours, Callahan had fired 3 shots, 3 confirmed kills. He replaced the sock. This discipline mattered. Reusing a sock too long risked ignition. Ignition meant flash. Flash meant death. The new sock went on. The rifle returned to position. As German activity intensified, the opportunities multiplied. Between 900 and 1100 hours, Callahan fired 11 times. Each shot was deliberate, targets included. Officers directing troop movement. An MG-42 gunner setting up along the road. A binocular-carrying observer scanning American lines. Messengers running between positions. Each engagement followed the same pattern. Identify. Confirm priority. Fire 1. Observe reaction. The German response changed subtly. Movement slowed. Wars are not only decided by firepower, they are decided by what soldiers believe is happening around them. On December 18, 1944, in a small sector of the Ardennes Forest during the Battle of the Bulge, German commanders did not believe they were facing a single American sniper. They believed something far worse. In the early hours of the engagement, German reactions were minimal. Officers fell, messengers collapsed, observers stopped reporting, but no one sounded an alarm. This was the Western Front in late 1944. Death was constant. Artillery fragments, stray rounds, and unseen hazards were everywhere. German troops assumed these early casualties were isolated incidents. That assumption bought the sniper time. By mid-morning, German junior leaders began noticing something unsettling. Officers were dying disproportionately. Casualties occurred only when individuals exposed themselves. No American assault followed. This did not align with artillery fire. Artillery was random, this was not. Still, without muzzle flash, dust signatures, or identifiable firing positions, German units struggled to classify the threat. Doctrine required identification before action. They had none. German counter-sniper procedures were among the most advanced of the war. Spotters scanned for muzzle flash. Units saturated suspected positions with machine gun fire. Mortars followed quickly. Patrols attempted flanking movement. But these procedures relied on visual or auditory cues. The American sniper provided none. Every counter-sniper response misfired, literally and figuratively. Machine guns fired at empty tree lines. Mortars shelled unoccupied ground. Patrols found nothing. Each failed attempt deepened uncertainty. There is a moment in combat when fear shifts from caution to paralysis. By early afternoon, that threshold had been crossed. German soldiers began to refuse orders to leave cover. Delay movement until absolutely necessary. Avoid officers rather than follow them. This behavior was irrational tactically, but psychologically predictable. The unseen killer had become more terrifying than artillery or tanks. German officers faced an impossible choice. To command effectively, they had to expose themselves, but exposure meant death. Witnesses later reported officers crouching, crawling, or delegating authority downward, actions that fractured command cohesion. When leadership hides, units disintegrate. By mid-afternoon, rumors overtook reality. Some soldiers believed the Americans were using a new silent rifle. A special sniper unit had been deployed. The position was under constant observation by multiple shooters. None of this was true, but belief mattered more than truth. Fear multiplied the sniper's effectiveness far beyond his rifle. German units began pulling back without orders. Supply routes were abandoned. Forward observers vanished. Positions fell silent. From the American perspective, resistance simply stopped. From the German perspective, survival had replaced strategy. Later captured German documents revealed the scale of confusion. Reports described invisible enemy fire, unlocatable American sniper activity, officer losses preventing effective control. One entry noted, effective command in this sector is impossible. This was not exaggeration, it was an admission of defeat. Post-war analysis revealed the critical failures: over-reliance on muzzle flash detection, assumption that American snipers lacked advanced concealment, underestimation of battlefield improvisation. The Germans were prepared to counter known threats. They were unprepared for simplicity. The following morning, American infantry advanced cautiously. They expected resistance. They found none. Weapons lay abandoned. Foxholes were empty. Officers lay where they had fallen. The German line had collapsed without a fight. 29 confirmed kills mattered, but the real impact was operational. A supply route was neutralized. A sector was cleared without assault. American casualties were avoided. This was economy of force at its most extreme. No official communiques celebrated the event. No medals were immediately awarded. Sniper successes were often buried in reports, classified, minimized, or ignored. But among those who understood warfare, the lesson was clear. Invisibility could win battles. The German army did not lose that sector because it was outgunned. It lost because it was outthought. An unseen enemy had stripped away confidence, initiative, and command, one officer at a time. In Part 5, we will examine what happened next, how a quiet battlefield adaptation influenced doctrine, spread across units, and left a legacy far greater than the man who first used it. Wars are remembered through victories and defeats, through cities liberated and armies destroyed, but some of the most important lessons of war are learned quietly, by soldiers whose names never appear in headlines, whose actions leave no monuments, and whose influence spreads not through orders but through example. The sniper action in the Ardennes in December 1944 was one such lesson. It did not change the course of the war, but it changed how war was fought. When American infantry units advanced into the abandoned German sector the morning after the sniper engagement, they were cautious. They expected resistance, they found none. The battlefield told a story without words, abandoned weapons frozen in snow. Command positions left untouched. Bodies of officers where they had fallen. There were no signs of retreat under fire. The Germans had simply left. This absence of resistance saved lives, American lives that would otherwise have been spent assaulting entrenched positions. Yet few understood why it had happened. Sniper effectiveness does not show up clearly in statistics. There is no territory seized directly by a sniper, no enemy unit destroyed in formation, no dramatic breakthrough attributed to one rifle. What snipers do instead is shape behavior. They delay, they disrupt, they demoralize, they force the enemy to act cautiously or not at all. In this case, one sniper team removed enough leadership to make continued German occupation of the sector untenable. The result looked like withdrawal. The cause was fear. There was no official announcement, no doctrinal bulletin, no field manual revision stamped with approval. Instead, the lesson spread the way soldier knowledge always does, quietly. Snipers talked, spotters listened. Extra socks appeared in packs, not for warmth, for concealment. Across American units in Belgium and Luxembourg, experienced snipers began experimenting with cloth over rifle barrels. Wool socks, scarves, strips of uniform fabric. The rules were passed down verbally, replace often. Keep it dark, never let it ignite. No one called it revolutionary, but everyone who used it understood its value. Modern warfare often celebrates technology, new weapons, new optics, new systems, yet history repeatedly demonstrates a paradox. The most effective innovations are often the simplest. The sock technique required no modification to weapons, no special training, no supply chain, no approval. It worked because it addressed fundamental physics, light, heat, motion, human perception, and it worked because it respected sniper discipline. It did not make a careless shooter effective. It rewarded patience, restraint, and control. Captured German documents and post-war interrogations revealed how deeply the event unsettled those who experienced it. German officers consistently cited fear of unseen fire, disproportionate officer casualties, inability to identify threat sources. Notably, there was no consensus on what they had faced. Some believed it was a new American weapon. Others suspected multiple snipers. A few feared constant observation by artillery spotters. None suspected a single rifleman using a piece of cloth. The truth was too simple to imagine. Sniping is often romanticized. In reality, it is a role defined by isolation, stress, and moral weight. A sniper must choose targets deliberately, observe before acting, accept responsibility for each shot. The sniper in the Ardennes did not fire impulsively. He fired when it mattered. Officers, observers, key personnel. Each decision carried consequence. Each kill altered the battlefield in ways unseen at the time. There was no public recognition. Sniper actions were often classified or buried in reports. This was deliberate. Snipers were not meant to become symbols. They were tools, quiet ones. The lack of recognition did not diminish the impact. It preserved the lesson. After the war, sniper training evolved. More emphasis was placed on signature reduction, concealment over engagement, psychological effects. Official manuals rarely credited individual battlefield improvisations. But the principles remained. Later generations of snipers, American, British, and others, would adopt increasingly sophisticated methods to reduce visibility: suppressors, flash hiders, advanced camouflage. Yet the underlying concept was unchanged. A sniper who cannot be seen controls the battlefield. Over time, stories like this risk becoming myths. Numbers blur, details fade, facts mix with legend. That is the danger of oral history. But even stripped of embellishment, the core truth remains. A single sniper team, properly trained and disciplined, can achieve effects far beyond its size, not through firepower, through fear. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered for tanks locked in frozen combat, surrounded divisions holding at Bastogne, the last great German offensive. But beneath those dramatic moments were countless quiet actions that shaped outcomes. A sniper removing officers, a patrol choosing